Imagination is not a superpower in the sense that it's something innate within us and we can like bend reality to our will kind of thing. But when I think about imagination, I think about the imagination of God, and that the superpower is that we're invited into God's imagination, that God gives us this spiritual capacity to join into what God sees and what God is imagining for our community, right? So that takes the emphasis off of us, which a lot of times imagination kind of conversations get hijacked into our human ingenuity and our abilities. Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the imagination of God and how we get drawn into God's imagination. And that's a superpower. Before God created anything, God dreamed and imagined what was there. God spoke creation into existence with a bang, but first God imagined and envisioned and dreamed what creation could be. So God imagines, and then God speaks, and God shapes and forms. And I love to think about God kind of playing forth humanity. God gets down in the mud of creation and slaps together mud pie human beings and breathes into us the breath of life. God is quite imaginative. And in some sense, being made in the image of God, that imaginative power is within us. It's part of our being image bearers, reflections of God. Now, in my travels and the work that I do with churches all over the United States and even different parts of the world, one of the saddest things I see is what Edwin Friedman called imaginative gridlock. When we lose the capacity to imagine, we just keep doing the same things, expecting a different result. We keep coming up with new answers to the same old questions. We just keep working in and driving forward and expecting that things are going to change at some point if we just do the things that we know to do. And one of the only ways that we can break out of that imaginative gridlock, Friedman said, was to play. In fact, you can tell the capacity of an organization by their capacity to be able to play together. And it sounds like the weirdest, most craziest idea, right? To go to a bunch of church folks who are like, we just don't want our church to die. We'll do anything. You know, this church means a lot to us. And to say, well, the most important thing we can do is learn to play again. And take the anxiety and the gridlock kind of out of the situation. And somehow play can kind of unlock, if you will, when our imaginations seem kind of diminished and bound up. So one of the beautiful things about church in the wild and cultivating these new Christian communities is it's a grand experiment. It's an adventure. Leonard Sweet and I like to use this language of adventuring because it's got a deep theological significance in Advent, which means an appearing, that God has appeared in Jesus Christ in the flesh. Advent's not just a season, it's a way of life. We are adventing because of this appearing, this coming of Christ, the coming of Christ in us every day, and the coming of Christ that's coming again soon. And we live in that space in between, and we're kind of adventuring between Jesus' coming and his triumphant return that's coming any day. And that requires adventuring, and adventing requires imagination. So think of this new Christian communities, fresh expressions, the blended ecology as an adventure in imagination. It's low risk. It doesn't cost anything to get together a group of friends and say, hey, we're going to start meeting this night in the burrito joint, and we're going to have burritos, all you can eat, chips and salsa, and have conversation about Jesus. Doesn't cost anything at all to find a person of peace. That comes from Luke 10. Jesus says, go out, find the person of peace that welcomes you, that invites you in, who maybe owns a tattoo parlor, or who may be a friend of yours that's been tooling around in virtual reality and has invited you to come and check it out with them. I think in the church world, the stakes are so high that if we just don't do this right, our church might close. If we don't figure out how to do this, we're not going to be here anymore. That's a heavy kind of burden. And when we feel that, the capacity for imagination gets diminished, and we get stuck in the cul-de-sac of asking the same old questions and getting the same old answers. And What we really need to do is imagine completely new possibilities. So, one of the ways we can do that is kind of begin to really pray and to ask God to show us our communities through fresh eyes, to ask God to invite God into God's imagination for our community. What possibilities does God see in your neighborhood, in your networks, in the spaces where you do life? Have you ever had a conversation with God about what God imagines for your community? And then as we kind of prayerfully enter into God's imagination, we have the courage to really dream big and start small. One of the things that we have to do for this all to work is to really kind of change our metrics and to celebrate smallness. You know, the church has really bought in hook, line, and sinker to this idea of um, bigness as the sign of success. And obviously, numbers can indicate success, but sometimes they don't, right? And Jesus, when he talked about the kingdom, he didn't talk about bigness. He didn't talk about lots of numbers. He didn't talk about grand building projects. When Jesus talked about the kingdom, he talked about small things. The smallest mustard seed can become the largest tree of faith where all the birds of the air can rest in its branches. The little small acts of faithfulness and love can change the world. And that's really the kind of thinking that we have to bring to this. Can we get a small group of people to gather together at a consistent time in a consistent place, do something that we love together? And can we imagine ways that that could actually be church for the people that are involved? Can I find a friend or two or three, find a simple way to get together and love on the people around us? When it's appropriate, share our faith in a non-sketchy way and see if a little church might spring up right there in what we're doing together. Now, if imagination truly is a superpower, then one of the saddest realities of the church today is the loss of imagination. If there's anywhere in the world where we should corner the market on imagination, it's in a church that professes to believe in a God who put on flesh in the fullness of time to get to us and to save us from ourselves. If there's any place where imagination should be part of our daily life together, it's in the Church of Jesus Christ, isn't it? So hear this encouragement. Play together, try stuff. Yes, you'll fail. Yes, many of these experiments might not ever emerge and fully a church might form out of it. But you'll have fun doing it. You'll build relationships with people that will have significance, eternal significance, and you'll make an impact for God's kingdom when we go out and join what God is up to in small and beautiful ways. It's my hope for you that you'll find God's imagination is your superpower.